"I'm pregnant," she said, smiling like it was the best news in the world. I stood there in the kitchen, frozen. She waited for me to react. She probably expected me to lift her off the ground and spin her around like some movie scene. But I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. Because I knew something she didn't know I knew. I can't have kids. It's not something I talk about, not even with my closest friends. And definitely not with her. Years ago, a doctor gave me the news after a bad case of the mumps in my 20s. He said it was rare but permanent. I'd made peace with it. I never wanted to be a dad badly enough to push the subject. And my wife, Jenna, had always been understanding about it, at least, I thought she was. But now, here she was. Glowing. Smiling. Pregnant. And I was supposed to be happy. Let me back up. A few weeks earlier, I'd surprised Jenna with a trip to her dream resort, Blue Harbor Island. All her life she wanted to go there. Sandy beaches, turquoise water, yoga on the beach, spa days. The kind of place we used to talk about when we were dating, sitting on our ratty old couch in our one-bedroom apartment, dreaming big. But life happened. Bills piled up. We never had enough saved for both of us to go. So when I finally closed that contract at work and got a little bonus, I thought, what if I sent her? Just her. She deserved it. Jenna had been through a tough year, her mom's health, work stress, and I'll admit, I hadn't been the easiest husband. I thought the time away might help her reset. I told her it was a gift, just for her. She cried when I handed her the envelope with the printed ticket. Hugged me for what felt like an hour. Said I was the most selfless man alive. I believed her. She left for 3 weeks. I missed her like hell. We FaceTimed every other night, and she seemed happy. Lighter. I figured the sunshine was doing its job. But sometimes, I'd get this odd feeling. Like she was distracted. Like there was something she wanted to say but didn't. I chalked it up to my own insecurities. When she came home, I rushed to the airport with flowers. She looked amazing, tan, relaxed, glowing. We kissed, she hugged me tight, and I honestly thought, this was the best thing I've ever done for her. We had a beautiful weekend. She cooked, we watched movies, made love, laughed like we hadn't in months. Then, 3 days later, came the bombshell. I'm pregnant. She dropped it casually, like she was telling me we were out of milk. But there was something off. Wait, I said. You're what? She beamed. Pregnant, Ben. I'm going to be a mom. I felt like the walls were closing in. My brain went white. Static. I sat down on the edge of the dining room chair, my legs trembling. That's big news, I said. I could hear my own voice, distant, hollow. She stepped toward me, grabbing my hands. I know we didn't plan this. But maybe this is meant to be. I know you always said it wasn't possible, but maybe, miracles happen. I nodded. Smiled. Pretended. But inside, my stomach was in knots. Because I knew. I knew it wasn't a miracle. It was something else. Someone else. That night, I barely slept. I lay next to her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing. My mind was spinning. Who? When? How long had this been going on? Was it someone from before the trip? Someone local? Or was it someone from the island? The next morning, she made pancakes. Hummed while she cooked, like everything was perfect. I watched her, trying to pick up any clue. She seemed so happy. Peaceful. Could she really have cheated on me and be this calm? That afternoon, I pulled out my old laptop, the one she never uses, and started going through our shared iCloud photo stream. Nothing. Just beach shots, smoothies, yoga selfies. All the stuff she'd shown me before. Then I checked her social media. Same thing. Clean. Curated. But something didn't sit right. Then I remembered, she had started journaling again before she left. Said she wanted to reconnect with herself. I found the little tan leather notebook tucked away in her nightstand drawer. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. My hands were shaking. I told myself I just needed to know. The first few pages were innocent. Descriptions of the island. Her spa treatments. Some reflections about our marriage. Then I found a name. Alec. The entry said. He saw me crying by the ocean and asked if I was okay. We talked for hours. It felt so natural, like I'd known him forever. I didn't expect anything. I just needed someone to talk to. But he made me feel alive again. Seen. My heart dropped. Another entry, 3 days later. I know it's wrong. I love Ben. But Alec. I can't explain it. I feel like I've stepped into another life. I slammed the notebook shut. My throat burned. So it was the island. She met someone there. Slept with him. And now she was pregnant. I felt like a fool. I gave her the gift of her dream vacation, and she came back carrying another man's child. That evening, I didn't say a word. She asked if I was okay, and I just nodded. Told her I was tired. I didn't know what to do. Do I confront her? Demand the truth? Or do I wait? Try to find out who Alec is. I needed proof. Something concrete. So I went back to the journal. Near the end, I found something strange. A line that didn't make sense. He said I'd never have to worry. That this would all be handled. That I'd never have to tell Ben anything. What did that mean? Was she planning to keep this secret? Raise the baby with me like it was mine? Was Alec married? Rich? Dangerous? My mind spiraled. Then came the final blow. A receipt. Folded inside the last page of the journal. A flight confirmation from Blue Harbor to Seattle, with a return date 2 weeks after the day she told me she was coming home. She lied about when she came back. She stayed longer. Without telling me. And just like that, everything in my life stopped making sense. I stared at the flight receipt, my hands shaking. She hadn't just had a fling. She stayed. Longer than she said. She kept seeing him. And now she was pregnant. I heard the front door open. Babe. You home? Jenna called from the hallway. I quickly shoved the journal back in the drawer and closed the laptop. Yeah, I called out, trying to keep my voice even. She walked in with 2 grocery bags and a soft smile. And suddenly, I couldn't look at her the same. Because now I knew. And I wasn't going to pretend anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there next to Jenna, her belly just beginning to show beneath her t-shirt, her breathing soft and steady, completely at peace. While I was wide awake, replaying every moment of the last few weeks, every smile, every word, every kiss, trying to figure out when my wife became a stranger. She said she was pregnant. She said it was a miracle. But I knew the truth. I couldn't have children. Which meant the child growing inside her wasn't mine. And now. I knew about Alec. The next morning, I couldn't keep it in anymore. I'd planned to wait, to gather more information, maybe reach out to this Alec guy if I could find him. But the lie was boiling under my skin like a fever. I waited until she poured her morning coffee. She always added 2 cubes of ice to cool it down, just like she did every morning. And I realized I hated how normal this morning felt. Jenna, I said, my voice flat. We need to talk. She looked up, blinked. Okay. About what? I held up the journal. Her face didn't move at first. Not a blink. Not a twitch. Then her jaw clenched. You went through my stuff. She said, voice low, hurt. Don't do that, I snapped. Don't make this about me. You lied to me. You cheated. You stayed 2 extra weeks in Seattle. I saw the ticket. She stared at me, wide-eyed. I don't think she expected that part. I dropped the notebook on the table. I know about Alec. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed the mug down. Then she sat at the table without a word. The silence stretched until I couldn't take it anymore. Tell me the truth. All of it. I need to hear it from you. She exhaled slowly, brushing her fingers through her hair. Then, finally, she began. I didn't plan it, Ben. I swear. I never went to the island to cheat. I was lost. I felt like I was fading. Fading. I echoed bitterly. While I was back home working overtime so you could sip piña coladas in the sun. Her eyes welled up. You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible. You've been distant for months, long before the trip. Always tired. Always distracted. I felt like I was living next to a ghost. I opened my mouth to respond but shut it again. Because, she wasn't wrong. I had been distant. But that didn't excuse betrayal. So you met Alec, I said. Then what? You fell into bed on day one. She flinched. It didn't happen like that. Then explain it to me. She looked away, eyes distant. He was staying at the resort for a tech conference. Divorced. Said he had no kids. We talked a few times. Then, one night I had too much to drink. I was upset, I'd been crying on the beach. He walked by. Sat next to me. We started talking, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. She paused. Wanted, she whispered. Desired. That hit me harder than I expected. Like a punch to the ribs. So you slept with him, I said, quietly. She nodded. Twice. I sat back in my chair. My heart felt like it was made of concrete. Then why come back and pretend like nothing happened? I asked. Why lie to me? Why not tell me the truth when you found out you were pregnant? She looked down at the table. Because I was afraid you'd leave. And I didn't know for sure if the baby was his. What if it was yours? I laughed, sharp and bitter. I'm sterile, Jenna. Have been for years. I just never told you because I thought it didn't matter to you. Her head snapped up. What? I can't have kids, I repeated. The doctors told me years ago. This child can't be mine. And you should have known that, if you actually trusted me. Her face turned pale. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, I didn't. Now it was my turn to stare. You didn't know. I said. So all this miracle baby stuff, you believed it. She nodded slowly, covering her mouth with her hands. Tears spilled over her cheeks. I thought it was a sign. I didn't know what to do. Alex said, he said not to worry. That he'd support me if I needed anything, but that I didn't have to tell you. He told me to go home, live my life. My blood ran cold. He told you not to tell me. She nodded. So he knows you're pregnant? Yes. And he's just, what? Letting you pretend it's mine. She wiped her face. He said he wasn't ready to be a father. He gave me his number, but said he'd leave the decision to me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This man, a stranger, told my wife to keep his baby and pretend it was mine, and she actually considered it. Do you even want this baby? I asked. She looked up at me, eyes red and raw. Yes. I do. I stared at her for a long time. And for a moment, I believed her. But I didn't know if I believed in us anymore. That night, I slept in the guest room. The house was too quiet. Every creak felt like an echo of our broken promises. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on anything except the image of Alex's face, a man I'd never met, who had taken something from me I didn't even realize I was still holding on to, trust. I opened her journal again. Looked for clues. Dates. Details. Anything. And there it was, a last name. Alec Morrison. I Googled it. Found a LinkedIn profile. CTO of a Seattle-based fintech startup. His profile picture was just as smug as I'd imagined, bearded, confident, standing on a yacht. I stared at his photo for what felt like hours. Then I picked up my phone. Typed his name into Facebook. And something caught my eye. A photo. From 3 months ago. Him. On the same beach I saw in Jenna's photos. But he wasn't alone. He was holding hands with another woman. And she was pregnant too. I stared at the photo, my thumb trembling as I scrolled in. Alec stood barefoot in the sand, sunglasses pushed up into his thick hair, one arm around a tall brunette with a noticeable baby bump. She leaned into him like they'd known each other for years. Like they belonged to each other. Her smile was genuine. His was even bigger. I checked the date again, just 3 months ago. Right around the time Jenna had been on the island. So Alec wasn't just a one-time mistake. He had a whole other life. Another woman. Another baby. And he told my wife he wasn't ready to be a father. I couldn't sit still. I got up from the couch, started pacing the living room, heart pounding. Was Jenna just one of several? Had he done this before? Told women what they wanted to hear, then disappeared. I needed answers. And I wasn't going to get them by sitting on my hands. I went back to Alec's Facebook profile. It was mostly private, but the woman in the photo had been tagged. Danielle Morrison. I clicked her name. Her profile was more open. Seattle-based. Marketing executive. And in her life events, it said, married Alec Morrison, 2020. Married. So Alec wasn't divorced. He lied to Jenna. And he had a pregnant wife back home while sleeping with mine on a beach like it meant nothing. I took a screenshot of the photo, saved it to my phone, and then did something I wasn't sure I'd regret or not. I messaged Danielle. Hi Danielle. I know this will sound strange, but I think we need to talk. It's about Alec. Please don't ignore this. It's important. Ben. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. I spent the rest of the day glued to my phone, but she didn't respond. That night, Jenna knocked on the guest room door. Can we talk? She asked. I didn't look up. What else is there to say? I know I hurt you. I'm not trying to make excuses. But I need you to know, I never stopped loving you. I was confused, I felt disconnected, but this baby. Ben, I want to raise it with you. I looked at her then. Raise Alec's child? I asked. She blinked. No. Our child. I know it's not biologically yours, but we can. You didn't even tell me about Alec until I found the journal, I snapped. And now you want me to just slide into the role of father like nothing ever happened. She swallowed hard, eyes shining. You're the only man I trust to be a father to this baby. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to rewind time. But instead, I nodded slowly. I'll think about it, I said. And I meant it. Not because I'd forgiven her. But because I needed time to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. The next morning, I got a reply. Danielle had messaged me back. Hi Ben, I'm not sure who you are or what this is about, but I'm listening. Please explain. I typed slowly, carefully, unsure how much to reveal. I believe your husband, Alec, had an affair with my wife while she was at Blue Harbor Island. She's pregnant. He told her he wasn't ready to be a father. But I saw a picture of you and him together, and I realized he lied to both of you. There was no response for a while. My heart pounded with each passing minute. I was sure she'd block me. Or maybe accuse me of stirring up drama. But then her message came in. Are you serious? Dead serious. I didn't know about any of this until 2 days ago. I found her journal. She mentioned Alec by name. Danielle replied with a single sentence. Give me your number. I want to talk. That evening, we spoke on the phone for nearly an hour. Danielle was calm at first, but I could tell it was the kind of calm that sits on top of a volcano. Her voice cracked more than once. She asked for details, dates, descriptions, where they met. I told her everything I knew. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she said, "This isn't the first time." I sat up straighter. What do you mean? Alec has cheated before, she said. More than once. I thought it was over. We'd been in therapy. But this. Her voice broke. A baby. She was quiet again for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you think your wife knew he was married?" I hesitated. "No," I said honestly. From what I read, she thought he was divorced. He told her he had no kids. Danielle scoffed bitterly. Classic. He lied to her too. Makes him feel less guilty. I wanted to ask her something, but I didn't know if it was crossing a line. Still, I asked. "Are you going to tell him you know?" She paused. Then, "Not yet. But I will. Just not until I decide what I'm going to do." We exchanged numbers and agreed to stay in touch. There was something comforting about talking to her, like we were both caught in the same storm, just trying to hold on to something solid. That night, I went back to the kitchen where Jenna was finishing a salad. She looked over her shoulder at me. "Everything okay?" I nodded. I talked to Alex's wife. Her knife stopped mid-slice. "You what?" She messaged me back. She didn't know either. "He lied to you both." Jenna dropped the knife into the sink. Oh my God. I waited for her to speak, but she just leaned against the counter, looking like the weight of it all had finally settled on her shoulders. "Does she hate me?" Jenna whispered. "No," I said. "She blames him." "Like I do." Jenna turned toward me, eyes tired. "What do we do now, Ben?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Later that week, Jenna had her first ultrasound appointment. She asked me to come. I told her I needed time. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the baby. A life neither of us planned. A life created from betrayal, but still innocent. I thought about all the things I'd never get to do as a father. And I asked myself something I never thought I'd ask. Could I love this child, even if it's not mine? The next morning, I knocked on Jenna's door. She opened it slowly, eyes hopeful but cautious. I handed her a small envelope. She opened it and pulled out a folded slip. A DNA test kit confirmation. "I want to be sure," I said quietly. "We need the truth. All of it." She nodded, eyes welling up. We stood there in silence, both knowing that the test wasn't about the baby. It was about whether we could build anything honest from this mess. The DNA test took less than 5 minutes. We sat at the kitchen table, neither of us speaking. Jenna swabbed the inside of her cheek and sealed the sample like a person on autopilot. I did the same, even though I knew the result. I had nothing to prove, just something to confirm. She asked me if I wanted to send it off together, but I told her I'd handle it. She didn't argue. She just nodded and went upstairs. When the door closed, I stared at the envelope in my hand. Small. Plain. But heavy with truth. I mailed it the next morning. Then we waited. Those were the longest 6 days of my life. We didn't speak much during that time. We were both home, both going through the motions. We'd pass each other in the hallway and say nothing. Sometimes she tried. She'd ask if I wanted coffee, or if I needed anything from the store. But I couldn't answer without hearing Alex's voice in my head. I couldn't look at her without seeing the lie. She spent more and more time in the nursery, what used to be the office. She'd bought little things, a stuffed giraffe, a mobile, a framed quote that said, "You are loved more than you'll ever know." I wondered who she had in mind when she bought that. Me. Or him. On the 6th day, the envelope arrived. It was sitting in our mailbox like a trap, waiting for someone to open it and lose their balance. I brought it inside and placed it on the kitchen counter. Jenna came down the stairs just as I was setting it down. Her eyes locked on it. She didn't say anything. "Do you want to open it together?" I asked. She nodded. I picked it up and peeled back the seal. Slowly. My hands were trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper. And on it, a sentence I had expected, but still couldn't fully absorb. Probability of paternity, 0%. Jenna covered her mouth and turned away, but I didn't say anything. There were no tears from me. No outburst. I just stood there, empty, staring at a number that had confirmed what I already knew. I was not the father. The silence grew thick. I didn't even realize she'd sat down until I turned around and saw her hunched over at the table, shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I nodded. "I know." She looked up at me, eyes red and raw. "I never wanted it to be like this. I didn't plan any of it. I felt alone. And Alec, he was there." I was weak. I didn't interrupt her. I just let her speak. "I thought maybe, just maybe, it could be yours. And I was hoping so badly it was. Because if it was, I thought maybe you'd stay." That sentence hit me harder than the test result. "You thought I'd only stay if it was my kid?" She nodded through tears. "That's not how love works, Jenna." "I know," she said, voice cracking. "But after everything I did, I didn't know what else to hope for." That night, I slept in our bed for the first time in a week. Not because anything was fixed, but because I needed to think. I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Jenna curled up on the edge of the mattress, silent and still, like she was afraid of being too close. I thought about leaving. About packing a bag and going to stay with my brother for a while. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Because there was one question I hadn't answered for myself yet. Did I still love her? And worse, could I love a child who would always remind me of how I'd been betrayed? The next day, I met up with someone I hadn't seen in years. My friend Troy, who had gone through a messy divorce 3 years earlier. His wife had cheated. Twice. We met at a quiet diner just off the highway. "You look like you've aged 10 years, man," Troy said, sliding into the booth across from me. I gave him a half-smile. "Feels like it too." I told him everything. From the trip, to Alec, to the baby, to the DNA test. He didn't interrupt. Just listened, occasionally nodding, jaw clenched. When I finished, he leaned back and sighed. "That's rough," he said. "I won't sugarcoat it. You've been hit hard. But let me ask you something." "Go ahead." "Do you want to raise the baby?" I paused. "I don't know." "Okay. Do you want to raise the baby with her?" That question lingered longer. "I don't know that either," I admitted. "But I know that if I leave, I might never forgive myself for walking away before I gave it a real shot." He nodded. "Then maybe don't leave just yet. Don't decide today. See where you're standing after the kid is born. You've got time." That night, Jenna approached me again. "I found a support group," she said. "For couples going through betrayal and pregnancy. I haven't gone yet. I just wanted you to know." I nodded. "That's good. I want to do the work," she said softly. "Whatever it takes. Even if you never forgive me. I want to try." Something in her voice sounded different. Calmer. Honest. I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her. Not the version of her I'd built in my head over years of marriage, but her, the flawed, scared, human version. Maybe for the first time in weeks, I saw a glimpse of who we used to be. "I can't promise anything," I said. "But I'll go with you. To one meeting." She nodded. "That's all I ask." The next morning, I got a call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Hello." "Ben," a woman's voice said. "Yes. It's Danielle. Alec's wife." I stepped out onto the porch, heart thudding. "What's going on?" I asked. "I thought you should know. Alec moved out last night." I confronted him. "Told him everything you told me." He didn't deny it. Didn't even apologize. I swallowed. "I'm sorry, Danielle." "Don't be. You did me a favor." We were quiet for a moment. Then she said, "One more thing. He told me there might be another woman. Besides your wife. From before. Maybe even more." My stomach sank. "Seriously?" "Yeah. I thought it might help you understand who he really is." I thanked her, and we hung up. When I walked back inside, Jenna was in the nursery again, holding the stuffed giraffe. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't just see the betrayal. I saw the woman I married, standing in the middle of the wreckage. Still here. Still trying. I didn't know where this road would end. But for now, I wasn't ready to walk away. 2 weeks passed. We went to the support group like we promised. Sat in folding chairs in a cold room that smelled like peppermint tea and uncomfortable truths. At first, I didn't say a word. I just listened to other couples talk about betrayal, rebuilding trust, raising kids that weren't biologically theirs. Some were trying. Some were on the edge. Some had already fallen off. But it was the silence between the words that hit me hardest. The moments when someone would pause to collect themselves, to swallow the lump in their throat, those were the moments that felt the most real. Jenna squeezed my hand halfway through the session. I didn't pull away. It was small. But it was something. That night, we sat in the parking lot for a long time, not ready to go home. You didn't say anything, she said softly. I shrugged. Didn't feel like it was my turn yet. She looked out the window. I'm proud of you for coming. I didn't come for them, I said. I came for us. She looked at me then, like she wanted to cry but was afraid to push her luck. I could see how hard she was trying to hold herself together, piece by piece. And I realized, for the first time, I wasn't just angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of living in this fog of mistrust. Tired of wondering who we were now. Tired of pretending like the baby wasn't coming. Because it was. And when it did, everything would change. 3 days later, it did. It was early morning. Jenna was standing by the sink, drinking water, when I heard the glass shatter. I ran into the kitchen. She was on her knees, clutching her stomach. Ben, something's wrong, she gasped. It hurts. She doubled over before she could finish. I grabbed my keys and helped her into the car. The entire ride to the hospital, I kept talking to her, trying to keep her awake. Her face was pale. She was sweating. Just hang on, okay? We're almost there. When we pulled up to the ER, 2 nurses rushed out with a wheelchair. I gave them her name. The nurse asked how far along she was, 22 weeks. I followed them inside, my heart pounding so hard I could barely think. They wheeled her away toward labor and delivery. I was told to wait. I stood there in that white hallway, feeling more helpless than I ever had in my life. I wanted to scream. To cry. To run. Instead, I sat in a chair and stared at the tiled floor. Time passed slowly. Eventually, a nurse came out and told me Jenna was stable, but there were complications. They were monitoring the baby closely. She let me into the room. Jenna was lying on the hospital bed, 4 in her arm, monitors beeping steadily. She looked exhausted. I sat beside her and took her hand. I'm here, I whispered. She opened her eyes slowly. Is the baby okay? They're doing everything they can, I said. Just rest. The doctor came in a little later. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a calm voice. She explained that Jenna had experienced preterm contractions and possible placental issues. They needed to keep her under observation for at least 48 hours. Is the baby in danger? I asked. There's risk, the doctor said gently. But we've stabilized her for now. Let's focus on one day at a time. That night, I stayed in the chair next to her bed. I watched her sleep. Watched the monitor. Watched the baby's heartbeat flicker on the screen like a small, stubborn signal in the dark. And I realized something. I cared. I cared about that tiny heartbeat. Not because it was mine. But because it was hers. Because it was life. And despite everything, despite the lies and betrayal, this life was happening right in front of me. And I didn't want to walk away from it. The second night in the hospital, Jenna woke up and turned her head toward me. Why are you still here? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer right away. Because I want to be, I said. She blinked slowly. Even after everything I did? I'm not saying I've forgiven you, I said. But I'm starting to understand why it happened. And I know that walking away now wouldn't make me feel any better. It wouldn't make this any easier. She started crying then. Softly. Silently. And I didn't let go of her hand. Not this time. 2 days later, we were discharged. The baby was okay. Still too early, still fragile, but hanging in there. We drove home in silence. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one felt less like punishment, and more like space for healing, space for understanding. When we got home, Jenna went straight to bed. I stayed in the nursery for a while. Turned on the mobile sheet hung above the crib. It spun slowly, playing that soft lullaby. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stood there, listening. And I knew I was in this now. Whether I liked it or not. The next morning, I got a message. It was from Danielle. Alec just called me. He wants to talk. He says he wants to be involved with your wife's baby. I read it 3 times. My stomach tightened. I messaged back. What do you mean? He wants custody. Not yet. But he says he's thinking about it. Says he has a right to know his son. I didn't respond right away. I went outside, sat on the porch, and stared out into the yard. Of course Alec would come back. Of course he'd change his mind. He had the luxury of walking in and out while we were the ones left to live with the consequences. I walked back inside and sat next to Jenna. We need to talk about Alec, I said. Her face paled. What happened? He reached out to Danielle. He wants to be involved. She looked like she'd been punched. I thought he didn't want this. Well, I said, he's changing his tune. She looked away, clutching her belly. What does that mean for us? I don't know yet, I admitted. But we need to prepare for a fight. That night, I emailed a lawyer. Not because I wanted to fight Jenna. But because I knew Alec was coming. And I wasn't going to let him waltz back in and tear apart whatever fragile thing we were trying to rebuild. I didn't know if Jenna and I would make it. But I did know one thing. This baby deserved better than being a pawn in someone else's regret. It started with a knock. Not the hesitant kind. Not the soft, uncertain tap of someone unsure. This knock was firm. Purposeful. Like the person on the other side of the door already believed he belonged inside. I opened it and saw him. Alec. Tall, good-looking in the arrogant way rich men often are. Smooth, tan, polished. Dressed like he'd stepped out of a catalog. And standing next to him, holding a slim black folder, was a woman in a navy blue suit. His lawyer. Ben, right. Alec said, extending his hand like this was some kind of polite introduction. I appreciate you taking the time. I didn't shake his hand. I didn't even blink. I just stepped aside. You've got 2 minutes. Use them wisely. He stepped inside like he owned the place. Took a slow look around. His lawyer stayed near the door, cool and quiet, like she'd done this 100 times before. I didn't come here to start a war, Alec said. I just want to talk about the baby. I folded my arms. You mean the one you told my wife she could raise in secret? The one you wanted nothing to do with until a few days ago. He sighed. Look, I messed up. I panicked when Jenna told me. I wasn't in the right place mentally. I had my own situation going on, and I didn't think it through. But now that I've had time to process. No, I interrupted. Let me stop you right there. You don't get to come in here and act like a changed man. You lied to her. You lied to your wife. And now, you want to flip a switch and be a father. You think that's how this works? I have rights, he said calmly. I just want to be involved. I'm not trying to take anything away from you. You already did take something, I snapped. My trust. My peace. And now you want to co-parent. His lawyer finally spoke. Mr. Walker, we're not here to threaten. Alec is simply interested in establishing paternity and negotiating reasonable visitation. Paternity's already confirmed, I said coldly. I've seen the test results. So let me be clear, this isn't your child to negotiate over. This isn't a deal. Alec looked annoyed now. The nice guy mask was slipping. Look, he said, I can drag this into court, or we can come to an agreement like adults. I'm offering you a chance to keep this civil. I took a step closer. You think showing up with a lawyer and a fake smile makes you civil? Just then, Jenna walked in from the hallway. She froze when she saw him. Alec, she whispered. He turned toward her, softer now. Hey. I wanted to talk in person. I needed to see you. I stepped between them. You don't talk to her unless she says you can. Jenna's voice was tight. What are you doing here? He gave a rehearsed little sigh. Trying to do the right thing. I've had time to think. I know I made a mistake. But I want to be part of our child's life. I want to take responsibility. She shook her head, visibly shaking. You said I should hide it. That I didn't have to tell my husband. That you didn't want a baby. I was scared. That was before I understood what this really meant. She laughed bitterly. It meant enough for you to go back home to your wife and pretend it never happened. Alec's eyes flicked to me. So, she told you everything, huh? Not everything, I said, stepping forward again. But enough to know you're not someone I want near this baby. His lawyer stepped in again. If this continues to escalate, we will proceed with filing for parental rights in court. I looked her in the eye. Go ahead. You'll lose. Because this isn't just about biology. It's about what's best for the child. And trust me, no judge is going to look at your client's history and call him Father of the Year. There was a pause. Then I said what I hadn't planned to say until that moment. I'm raising this child. With or without Jenna. With or without you. So if you think you're going to walk in and play dad every other weekend, think again. Jenna looked at me, stunned. And Alec? His eyes narrowed, and I finally saw the truth beneath the polished surface. He wasn't here for the child. He was here to win. To control. To fix a mess of his own making without actually cleaning anything up. They left not long after. With no agreement. No signature. Just tension in the air and a lawyer's warning echoing in the hallway. You'll be hearing from us. Jenna and I stood at the window, watching them drive away. I didn't ask him to come, she said quietly. I didn't even know he knew where we lived. I nodded. I believe you. She turned to me. Ben, when you said you wanted to raise this baby, did you mean it? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Yes, I said. But I won't lie. I don't know what that means yet. I don't know how it'll feel 2 years from now, or 5. But right now, I know this, I don't want this baby to grow up in a storm of court hearings and power struggles. I want them to feel safe. To feel loved. Not like some prize 2 grown men are fighting over. She broke into tears. That's all I want too. We met with a family lawyer the next day. A woman named Teresa, who wore glasses and didn't smile much, but had a calm, steady presence. We laid it all out, everything. She listened carefully, took notes, then said, if he files for parental rights, we'll have to respond. But we can also take the offensive. Jenna, since you're the biological mother and the child is being raised in a stable household with Ben as the intended legal guardian, we can petition for full custody and restricted visitation. Do we have a chance? I asked. Teresa nodded. You have more than a chance. You have a case. Especially if Alec's past infidelities, lies, and attempts to distance himself from the pregnancy are documented. Judges don't look kindly on that. Jenna and I exchanged glances. For the first time in weeks, I felt like we weren't just surviving anymore. We were preparing to fight. Not out of anger. But to protect something fragile that still had a chance. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Jenna was asleep beside me, hand resting gently on her belly. And I realized something. I wasn't just doing this for her. Not even just for the baby. I was doing this for me. Because somewhere along the way, despite everything, I'd fallen in love with the idea of this child. Not because of how they came into the world, but because they were innocent. And because maybe, this was my second chance to be more than just a bystander in my own life. The courtroom smelled like fresh paper and cold coffee. Jenna sat beside me in the front row, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I could feel the tremor in her fingers even though she didn't say a word. Alec sat on the other side with his lawyer, polished, rehearsed, calm. He looked like a man playing a part. No emotion. No regret. Just strategy. Today wasn't just about visitation rights or custody papers. Today was about what kind of future this child would be born into. The judge entered. We all rose. And then, it began. Alec's lawyer went first. She painted a picture of a man who had made an honest mistake. A man who panicked under pressure but came back out of a sense of responsibility. A man who was now ready to step up and be a father. She claimed Alec wanted joint legal custody and reasonable visitation, starting from birth. She emphasized his stable financial background, his desire to be involved, and even mentioned he'd already set up a college fund. It sounded impressive. Calculated. Almost admirable. Until our lawyer stood up. Teresa didn't speak fast or loud. She didn't wave her arms or lean forward. She simply presented the facts. Alec had knowingly deceived Jenna about his marital status. He advised her not to tell her husband about the pregnancy. He only reappeared when confronted by his own wife. And he had shown, through his initial abandonment and inconsistent intentions, a lack of commitment to the child's well-being. Then, Teresa said the words that hung in the room like thunder. This child has already been claimed, not biologically, but emotionally, practically, and responsibly, by Benjamin Walker. The man who stayed. The man who supported the mother through a medical emergency. The man who's been preparing a home and a life for this child before the biological father even returned his calls. And then. She called her final witness. Danielle. Alec's wife. You could hear the collective breath get caught in every throat when she walked to the stand. Even Alec's lawyer turned and blinked in surprise. She took the oath, sat down, and looked straight at the judge. I'm here to tell the truth, she began, her voice steady. Because for too long, I've helped Alec avoid consequences. But I won't let another child get caught in his patterns. She detailed everything. Alec's history of affairs. How he'd confessed to multiple past relationships with women during business trips. How he initially claimed Jenna's baby wasn't his problem. And how he only came forward when he realized someone else, me, was willing to step into the role he'd run from. The judge asked her to clarify whether Alec had ever shown genuine interest in fatherhood before. She hesitated. Then shook her head. No, Your Honor. He likes the idea of fatherhood. Not the responsibility. Alec's lawyer objected, but the judge waved it off. Danielle's testimony stood. And in that moment, I felt something shift. Not just in the room, but in me. After the closing statements, the judge requested a brief recess. Jenna and I sat quietly in the hallway, watching lawyers pace with coffee cups and folders full of lives they didn't live. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I didn't expect her to come, Jenna whispered. Neither did I said. But I'm glad she did. You don't have to keep doing this, you know, she said. You could walk away. You'd be justified. No one would blame you. I looked at her belly. Thought of the tiny fluttering heartbeat I'd seen on the monitor weeks ago. And I knew. I'm not here because I have to be, I said. I'm here because I chose to be. She looked at me like she might cry. But she didn't. She just took my hand and squeezed it. We returned to the courtroom, hands still linked. The judge began reading his statement. His voice was calm, firm, and deliberate. He acknowledged Alec's biological connection. His right to seek involvement. His financial preparedness. Then he acknowledged Alec's deceit. His inconsistencies. His initial rejection of parental duty. Then he turned toward me. Mr. Walker, he said. While you are not the biological father, the court recognizes the emotional and practical investment you've made into the life of this unborn child. Your role has already taken on a form of parenthood. Therefore, I am granting temporary joint custody to Ms. Walker and you, with priority rights to determine the child's residence. He turned to Alec. Mr. Morrison, you are granted supervised visitation after the birth, contingent on proof of parenting classes, counseling, and regular involvement. Alec's face barely moved. But behind the stoic mask, I saw it. Defeat. Real, quiet, personal defeat. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a victim anymore. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different. Lighter. Jenna and I walked to the car in silence. When we got in, I just sat there for a moment with the keys in my hand. We won, she said softly. I nodded. Yeah. We did. But it still hurts, doesn't it? I looked at her. Yeah. It does. There was a pause. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. Are you going to stay? I didn't answer right away. Because staying wasn't a decision I could make in one afternoon, after one court hearing, or even after one victory. But I looked at her, really looked, and I thought about the nights in the hospital, the silence that softened, the tears we shared without words. And I realized I wanted to stay. Not out of guilt. Not out of duty. But because maybe, just maybe, this broken place we were standing in could become something whole again. I'll stay, I said, if we build this together. Honestly. No more lies. No more hiding. She nodded. No more. 6 weeks later, the baby arrived. A girl. She came early but healthy. Strong lungs. Bright eyes. We named her Maya. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I felt something crack open in me, a space I didn't know had been empty. She wasn't mine by blood. But she was mine. She was a reminder of everything we'd lost, and everything we still had a chance to gain. And when Jenna leaned her head against my shoulder, watching our daughter sleep between us, I knew. This was the beginning. Not of a perfect life. But of a real one.